But aren't the people across the country a little impatient with politicians? Don't they feel they're a little out of step? I mean, what was this manifestation last week? They came.
Maybe the feeling. I guess what I'm saying is maybe the feeling is mutual. I mean, maybe what we need to do is understand and come to terms with the fact that solving this thing is going to require a lot of goodwill. It's going to require some intelligence and some focus. It may be that focusing exclusively on the Constitution, we may not solve the problem right away, for the simple reason that we still have a government in Quebec City that's clearly committed. Madame Baudouin reasserted that today, that they're still committed to going over the top. And I think we therefore have to say, well, look, they've got time in their mandate, so does the federal government. What we need to do, and what all of us as Canadians need to do, is make sure the country works better, and at the same time find the practical ways to say to Quebecers, you don't need to break up this country in order to get the kind of recognition, the kind of feeling of being at home within Canada. You don't need to break up the country to do that. But that's why I was referring
to the other stresses, not only Quebec, but Mr. Manning and the Reform Party.
Quebec's not the only agenda. That's absolutely right.
Mr. Harper.
Yeah, well, I guess what I'd reiterate tonight is the difficulty of constitutional change, I think, is obvious, and we saw that with Madame Baudouin's statements. They're committed to creating a sovereign state.
But how are we going to get it together? Your vision is totally different than Mr. Chrétien's.
What has to happen, what the people have to do tomorrow, and I think a lot of them will want to do it in Quebec and elsewhere, is pressure their governments to get on with governing and addressing their practical economic, fiscal, and social concerns. And you know, tonight there's been all this attention to the federal government. What's the federal government going to do? But one of the big questions is, what is the Quebec government going to do? It has used the last 2 years to prepare for this vote. Now, is it going to get on with governing itself and improving the lives in the province of Quebec? There is a tremendous healing that has to be done, but quite frankly, there's a lot of people who are going to have to climb down off of grand visions and start addressing some real concerns, because I think people are more sick of that than anything.
What will also be interesting to see is the position that Mr. Johnson develops for the Liberal Party in Quebec, because the no force, as represented by Mr. Johnson and all those supporters, will want the Liberal Party to develop a constitutional position, and yes, a position vis-à-vis the rest of Canada. And that'll be very interesting to watch, because I think that it will have a serious impact as to the way that the federal government reacts to Quebec, because they will feel that this is le seul interlocuteur that they really have.
The simple truth is most people want the country to work better. Most people want the country to work better. Most people want the country to stay together in Quebec and outside Quebec. And these are, I hate to make it sound so simple, but really we can make it as complicated or as simple as we want. We can make the country work better, and we can remember that the vote tonight was still, if you include all those people who voted yes, who still want the country to stay together, a substantial vote in favor of continuing with Canada.
30% of those who said yes believe they were voting for a passport, citizenship, and continued association with this country. That's what they believe.